Hey guys, Randy Patrick here, talking about the housing bubble 2.0 that we are in. If you recall, last video was about stage 2, the fact that we are now in stage 2 of the housing bubble, and we essentially are at the peak. That's what stage 2 is. Today's video, we're going to talk about stage 2 as well, but the fact that people are still drinking the housing bubble Kool-Aid, and that's a problem. And we'll talk about this right now. So ultimately, why does that occur? Well, everyone forgets that statistics look backwards in time. So when we take a look at what's going on, appreciation, home values, etc., people get excited. Why? Because we're going back in time. We're looking at June's numbers, July numbers, etc. So we're looking back going, wow, that's great, and we think it's going to still be rosy in the future, and they don't quite understand that. So we're at the peak and things are starting to slide. And again, what also happens is that we look at year-over-year numbers, which is a macro level, as opposed to looking at a micro level, which is month-to-month changes. So if we actually delve deeper into statistics, you're going to find that stuff is slowing down and starting to drop. But again, when we look at numbers that we hear in the mainstream media, we hear about these great appreciation things. So anyway, here are some of the highlights that are going to support this Kool-Aid mentality, all right? West Coast appreciations are among the highest out there. So they have the highest appreciation gains. Seattle, Vegas, and San Francisco posted double-digit annual gains, and 13.6%, 12.6%, 10.9% respectively. Pretty good numbers year over year, that's for sure. Now, as I said, people are kind of numb to the appreciation. This is typical bubble mentality. The real estate bubble makes us feel good about what's going on, and we don't want to see it end. So we actually kind of fall into this false sense of security and a bit of denial, and that's what's happening right now. So people I talk to, people I communicate with in real estate, people I see at my real estate investment club, they have no idea what's going on. As far as they're concerned, it's still going like this. Everyone's happy. Let's get into real estate, let's flip some homes, do some fix and flip, whatever it is. And that many of them are ultimately shocked that we're in this position right now because they don't study it, they don't want to know it. Again, that's that bubble mentality. Let's just keep it going because I feel good and I don't want to think about what's going to happen if everything busts loose. So that's where we're at. The average person, consumer, they just simply assume it's going to continue, as simple as that. And they have no idea as to what is really coming here. Now, the gains we are seeing are roughly 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation, which is pretty scary. Affordability has gotten progressively worse over the past 18 months. Rents are still increasing on an overall basis. However, some specific locations are starting to crack, and we've seen some slight declines in various locations across the country, primarily starting with the mega cities like Chicago, New York, San Fran, whatever. We see some rent decreases on a month-to-month level. Mortgage rates, again, are still rising. I believe the Fed did not raise the rates with this last go-around, which is good. But again, mortgage applications are at a 4-year low in July. And when you look at this, every week it's posted, mortgage applications are directly or sort of inversely proportional to the rates. When rates are high, applications are low, which just makes sense. And also people are getting tapped out, right? I mean, with high appreciation that's gone on over the past few years and prices that seem to be still increasing in some markets, home ownership is becoming very unattainable for a lot of people. Most people's paychecks are spent on housing cost, whether it's rent or mortgage. There's an obvious increase with respect to the debt to income ratio that many lenders are allowing right now on recent mortgages. This is in fact endorsed by the federal government. I don't know if you remember, but about a year ago, the FHA basically made a conscious decision to raise the debt to income ratio up to 43%, and in some cases are going up to 50% as well too. So that's a lot of housing expense to be burdened on a monthly income. Now, to coincide with that, April's National Mortgage Risk Index, that's tough to say, National Mortgage Risk Index, set an all-time high and was primarily driven by a leap in the amount of cash out refis. So clearly, like the last housing crisis, when there's a lot of tappable equity, which we apparently are at the peak of tappable equity as well for everybody's homes. So when you have all this equity out there, refis are going to be popular and people are going to dip into their home to take the money out. And remember, when you're doing refis, obviously that's based on usually an 80% loan to value. And again, it's based on appraised value of your home, which again, comparables and appraisals are looking at past solds from a month ago, 30 days ago, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, to determine the value of your house, which you can tap into. So that's backward looking as well too, doesn't consider much on the front end. So just realize it's based on sold properties. And just something of interest I want to point out here, even though the subprime market has been credited with the start of the previous housing crisis and collapse, I want to make sure I understand that subprime loans only made up about 20% of the overall mortgage defaults that took place. One of the biggest culprits in the last housing crisis and collapse was cash out refis and HELOCs, so home equity lines of credit. People, again, tapping into that newfound equity, and the dollar value you get, the value, your cash, supposedly should be used for home improvements, etc., that are going back into your property, which in turn increases the overall value. But we all know that didn't really occur, and people got caught. They were using their houses like ATMs. That was kind of the joke of the day. It still is now. So again, it's almost like what has happened 10 years ago is happening once again with the whole appreciation cash out refi opportunity here. Side note, millennials state they have lost hope in the idea of home ownership, which again, it goes to high interest rates, more of your money being spent on housing costs, less disposable cash. You basically have to bid against other people in the market to get homes. You're probably not getting what you want. You're living further out in suburbia maybe than you want to. It's based on, again, lack of inventory and high prices. So it's a seller's market that's beginning to change, as we know that. And I guess ultimately, what the sentiment is, people have reached their breaking point with respect to buying a house. Like, how much more can we go? How much, if I have, $20,000 or $40,000 to put on a house, every month that goes by, that percent of down payment decreases with respect to, the prices going up and my loan to value ratios. That's just the way it goes. Now, from Realtor.com, from the real estate agents, the July housing trend report, very interesting. Inventory turnaround in the higher priced markets, often at the pricier end of the markets, not just in California now. It's on both coasts and the South had increases of inventory coming on the market. So San Jose, that area, found a 44% increase in inventory. Seattle, a 29% increase in inventory. Providence, 23%. Dallas, up 15%. San Francisco, up 10%. Boston 5%, and New York 2%. Now, New York City has also been having lower, I guess you could say lower volumes of sales, and has already slid with respect to some of the condos and developments that are going downtown Manhattan area, and et cetera. So realize that. Also, I don't have the statistics, but it's well known if you read the news wires and the media out there that Southern California, a lot more inventory has come on the market, which is affecting prices. And I don't have statistics to back that up, but that's been a general sentiment and a lot of discussion right now. Sales in the Hamptons are down. Second quarter sales fell 12.8% from the previous quarter, and the median sales price of a home in the Hamptons dropped 5.3% to just under $1 million. Now, obviously, we know there's some mega mansions on the Hamptons, but again, the average, the median, has fallen to under $1 million from over $1 million, which is interesting. From Adam Data Solutions, one of my favorite places to get information about real estate, annual home price appreciation has slowed for 5 consecutive quarters now. So again, we saw huge appreciation as the norm, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so that jump is drying up for the 5th consecutive quarter. In quarter 2 statistics, appreciation slowed from the previous quarter in 80 of the 120 metro markets that they're looking at. So that's 66% of the metro markets basically had slow appreciation. So it's starting to plateau. Here are some interesting comments from people who are much smarter than I am and are talking about the industry. So a Zillow senior economist suggests that there are some, and I quote, faint, preliminary, sometimes contradictory, and maybe deceptive signals that the tide is beginning to turn, that in itself, and in real estate, and that in itself is a big admission, I think, from Zillow, because Zillow, I think, always wants to have your Zillow estimate being as high as possible for all the stuff they offer real estate agents, and now they want to offer to homeowners and list properties and sell properties and broker properties, whatever. So Zillow has their own agenda. So for Zillow to kind of, state that, maybe there's a little sign that it's turning in Zillow language is interesting. Robert Shiller, as we all know, a Nobel Prize winning economist from Yale University, and we all know from the Case-Shiller Housing Index, stated that this could be the beginning of the turning point. So we have, smart, learned, professors, economists stating that, hey, things are changing in the marketplace, we all should listen to them. Now, unlike the last bubble, which really started with the subprime mortgages and the low-end homes kind of crumbling and working its way upward, I think this bubble looks a little different. We're seeing issues at the peak, the San Fran, Seattle's, the New York's, whatever, Miami's, Southern California. So the higher the housing market tends to start to crumble first, and it's going to work its way downward into the average home, the lower end. So realize your own specific location will take its own path for this bubble and this wind down and the burst. I can tell you in my area, I live in the Tampa, Florida area, and our inventory has been consistently low. And I am also a real estate broker besides an investor, so I can look back at statistics. I just got we'll call it our Tampa Realtor magazine that came out this week, and it showed that inventory did not change whatsoever, and I can look exactly on our MLS, and it hasn't changed as well too. Still low inventory, still maintaining that position. Now, I expect we're going to see some price gains or holds in the summer months as statistics are announced, and that'll coincide with seasonal closings. So once the seasonal closings have sort of happened, which is really pre-school, before school gets started, everybody wants to buy, sell, close, their homes, move, get their kids in the schools. So we're going to see some seasonal closings. Once that happens in August and in some places in September, because depending where you live across the country, you may have school starting after Labor Day. So we're going to see probably some, backward-looking statistics that have held value or maybe even gained value, again, seasonally adjusted. And then once September kind of hits, we're going to start seeing some flow after Labor Day. So anyway, the declines will be picking up the pace. Here's a thought I'd like to share is we don't really have a crystal ball, but we do have a complete dry run from 10 years ago. And we can look back and predict the future somewhat. So based on what's going on in the market right now, doesn't appear that we've learned anything, that we're making the same mistakes, the same things are happening or being allowed to happen, which I think there's a larger power behind taking care of things that we don't know about or we can all guess maybe. I was told by somebody that the last housing crisis was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it looks like we're going to be fortunate to have a second chance at this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, which is kind of neat. So make sure you're prepared for this time around. Again, I want to thank everybody for the subscriptions and the comments, and we'll look forward to chatting again in a week or so. Thank you.